Hey, you. I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Allcast Podcast. No topic is off the table. I hope you enjoy.
All right. The return of Casey Cusick. How you doing, Casey?
I'm doing well, Andy. Good to be back. Appreciate you having me back on, brother.
Yeah. Happy to have you come back. So today we're going to talk about a couple items, going to do an update on all the January 6th stuff.
Okay.
You've had your sentencing, you had the prosecution in court, you had to drive all the way back to Washington, D.C. for. So we're going to get into all that, what it
Okay.
means, what happened, how it's affected your family. And then kind of the secondary portion, you lived in Israel for a while,
I
and
do.
you know a lot more about the Bible and the eschatology and the end times scriptures than I do. So I'd really like to get into that and kind of go over what's happening now and what does it juxtapose with the scriptures. So
Okay.
so last time we talked, you had gone to the Capitol for um the Trump rally, and then at the end of the Trump rally, it was a peaceful, like, everybody, all right, let's go to the Capitol and peacefully protest outside the Capitol to say, hey, you guys can't keep doing what you're doing. You're not
hmm
thinking of the American people, all that stuff. And then certain things happened in different pockets, and where you were, there was no violence, no issue, but there were
That's right.
people, police officers, Capitol Police, waving you into the building.
I never saw them waving me in, but there was videos of other people that went in. They were waving them in, but that wasn't where we went in because, like I said, we weren't even up to the Capitol. I would say until like probably a few hours after you know the initial people getting on the Capitol grounds. I mean, there was from now going through trial. I guess at one time there were barricades in the on Capitol grounds, but like I said, we didn't see any of that because we were up there at like 2:45, and I think some of that stuff was removed. I don't know the exact time frame, but sometime before 1 o'clock, I want to say. And there was people. I mean, even in one of the videos that I've seen now, there was a man that was cutting what they call snow fencing, which I'm from Florida, so I don't even know what snow fencing was. But snow fencing, I now know is the mesh looking fence that kind of keeps the snow from blowing around the winter time. But anyhow, they had some snow fencing that they used, but it was cut by a gentleman who, by the way, has never even been prosecuted. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that. So I mean, what's the reason that he wasn't prosecuted?
They're playing games by people who are telling them how to play games. I think that's it, to simplify it. That's what's going on. So if anybody's listening wants to hear the full story, there's a previous episode I did with Casey detailing that story, what happened afterward. So now we're just going to get caught up to today.
Okay.
So what happened after all that? They said
So I don't.
eventually you're going to have to go to court.
Yeah. So we had a trial date that was finally set. It went on. I was arrested by the FBI June 24th, 2021. July 17th was our no July 10th. I want to say was our court date. So July 10th, as in 2023. So almost over 2 full years later, we finally went to trial. And I mean, it was many different things happened along the way, in regards to the case with just all these conflict of interest things because me and my dad were represented by the same attorney. I mean, it just goes on and on. But we even had a judge change. I mean, originally we had Judge Sullivan, who was Mike Flynn's judge during all that time, and we had a judge change, and it was Judge Bates. I believe after going through what I've gone through, and once I get to the end, I think Judge Bates was very fair in many regards towards us. Some people say that he was DC fair, but it is what it is, and I'll take any fairness that I can get in this whole situation. But so yeah, we went to trial, man. We went back to DC, on our own dime. We traveled across country. I'm in Oklahoma, so we traveled all the way up to across the country to DC, which I will still say, and I tell everybody this: America is still the most beautiful country in the whole world. It's going across the middle part of the country in the summertime. I mean, it was just beautiful. And actually going back for sentencing this particular time, it was the same exact thing because everything's fall and all that. The leaves are changing.
Hmm.
So, anyways, we went to trial, and going into trial, I had hope. I mean, I had hope that things would be fair, that we would be given a fair chance. We were told all along, it's a DC jury. I have no experience in DC courts. I don't think most people do. But when we got in there, I, they call in the jury the first day, and we start looking at these jurors, and it's like, oh my gosh, it really was hard to. I mean, many of them were still wearing masks. Many of them were, you know, just everything that you could consider to be somebody that you would think would be biased. And they started getting up on the stand, and they were all asked a group of questions. For those of you that aren't familiar with the way it works in court, at least at this in a trial, they're asked a set of questions, which were: do they believe the election was? Have they gathered any core beliefs based on the 2020 election? Second was about JAN6, and so every one of them are asked. They all, and I mean all. Before I even get into that, before even the jury was brought in, there was probably 5 or 6 that had to be crossed off the list because of conflicts of interest. For the fact that I think there was at least 3 that worked straight for the Department of Justice. So, I mean, you got employees from the Department of Justice that are on a jury pool because, they're pulling a jury out of DC, which, by the way, is like 70%, I want to say, somewhere around there, government employees. So, I mean, and something one of my attorneys brought up during it, the city of DC, as in the mayor, is suing in regards to JAN6 and JAN6ers. So we're literally going up against people that are actually suing us. These are some of the These are the jurors that are sitting on the. I mean, whether or not they're a part of the lawsuit, and they are a part of the city of DC. So the city of DC has a lawsuit going, and you'll have to look into that because I'm not sure about the specifics of it. But
you don't know what they're suing for?
No, I'm not sure about the specifics of it, but I know Muriel Bowser, I think is her name. She has a lawsuit going against some JAN6ers, some of the JAN6ers. I think it was some of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. So, anyways, but everybody says, well, why didn't you get it change of venue? Well, every JAN6er that's requested a change of venue, which, by the way, is every JAN6er, are all denied. I mean, they're just all denied because they know if it comes out of DC, we have a chance to beat it in court. Yeah. And so, as they begin to question the jurors, you get some that are just so hateful towards any Trump supporters or JAN6. They think it was the worst day in the whole world, even though the previous summer, their city was nearly burnt to the ground. There was looting. There was rioting in the streets. I mean, right in their city, which there was none of that on JAN6, by the way. There was no looting. And so, anyways, but yeah, so they start getting asked these questions. And do you have yes, I have an opinion about the election. I don't believe it was stolen. I mean, they want to prove that they already are, you're lost at that point. So then you go to the next question. Do you have any views based on JAN6? Most of them say straight up. And I'm telling you, some would be so biased that even the judge would have to strike them off of the jury pool. And they would say, hey, yes, I have an opinion about JAN6. They all thought it was one of the worst days in American history, if not the worst day. Every juror. I'm not joking.
That's quite a lack of perspective.
It is. And so, they're asked after that, could you put your bias aside or any views that you formed based on that and set them aside to judge these men right here based on what they did that day, not what others did, what they did. I don't think I could do it, Your Honor. You don't think you could do it? No, I just really don't think I could be just really hard for me to do it. Are you sure you couldn't at least, you couldn't do it? It just would be so hard for me. And you would say, well, could you at least could you try? Could you at least try? Oh, okay, maybe I could try. Yeah, I could try. Boom, there'd be a juror. Juror 1.
That is very unjust. It is.
Criminal. It is. And so after seeing that through the jury selection, you still try to read people and, ones that you think might be in your favor, not your favor. I'm telling you, man, it was tough. I mean, I think 6 of the 12 jurors, I think maybe they do 14, but only 12 are actual jurors because there's 2 that are stand-ins in case two of the others or one of the others gets sick, which that didn't happen. But anyway, so, you start trying to look and see and think. But like I said, half of them probably, I think it was, that wore masks. So, I mean, it's just like, right off the bat, these people are not going to be, for us. And in federal cases, you only need one juror. You only need one to stand up and say, not guilty. And we didn't get that. Unfortunately, we went through trial. We were called rioters. We were called part of the mob. We were told over and over again. They insinuated multiple times. One of the things was on January 7th, we were out and around the city because, what else is there to do? We were there till the 8th, and we were going to go out and look around. And there was not much open then because of COVID. So like the main museums on the mall were all closed and stuff like that. And so one of the times we drove by the Capitol. DC isn't that big. You're bound to. We saw that they were putting up a fence. One of the gentlemen that we were there with took a picture of it. They took that in turn and used that, saying that we went by the day after JAN6 and did a victory lap. So this is the stuff that they insinuate, and it's just really, they use terms and words that you said maybe walking up through there. They used people climbing the wall or on the scaffolding, and I said, I wasn't climbing the wall. I didn't want to climb the wall. I wasn't there to do that. Other people that were doing that, that's them. That wasn't me. I think that was stupid, and that didn't impede you from going up there. You just kept going. This dramatic. It would make you sick to your stomach to even hear this, how dramatic these prosecutors are when asking you questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it unlawful to approach the Capitol?
Well, based on what we found out, and I know most people don't even know this, but number one, there was multiple permits pulled that day for Capitol grounds for there to be rallies, which is why the president told me, like I said before, we never intended to even go to the Capitol. We were there for the rally, which was all the way down by the White House. It's like a 25 to 30-minute walk away from the Capitol. It wasn't until President Trump started saying, now we're going to go down and peacefully protest. And even the way he said it, he was going to come. He said we, as in he was coming too. So we were like, okay, well, we had nothing else to do that day anyways. It was still early, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, in the afternoon. And so, so anyway, we start when we got down there, and so what I was saying is that there was a permit, multiple that were on Capitol grounds, even
that were approved permits
by the city
for these people to be there.
Which I still had no idea. I'm just telling you that I know that now. On that day, I had no idea about any of that, but that is a true fact. Secondly, they put these barricades and things up, and it's not about going inside. It's about being on Capitol grounds in general. So Capitol grounds becomes restricted because the president of Congress is there that day, which would be the vice president who presides over the election or presides over any time in politics or in Congress where they have a tie. He comes in to break the tie, and or any time that he's needed. So he's considered the president of Congress. So when he's there, the building becomes restricted. But if you ask the average Joe Schmo that on the street, nobody has a clue. We don't live in DC. I don't know that. Yeah. I never knew that. And so, so this is one of the reasons. But they don't read that when they read the charges to the jury. Those things aren't even brought up. In fact, on the beginning of a charge, it says violent entry into the Capitol, which the video proves. We walked inside. How could we violently have walked in? You don't walk violently. There was no pushing. There was no shoving. Their witnesses, they had a captain of the police who at the time was a lady, and she was asked by our attorney, did these gentlemen violently enter? No. Did they display any disorderly or disruptive conduct when entering or on Capitol grounds? No. Did they picket or parade? And the answer she gave, which by definition means you have a sign, a flag, or something that you're holding, which is what picketing is. No, they didn't do that either. And she goes, in my opinion, they look like they were just milling around. So, their own witness straight up said, it didn't matter to the jury though, but their own witness did say that. Another one of their witnesses was a Capitol police officer. Actually, he was a Metropolitan Police. Okay. So the Metropolitan Police officer, he was standing out, and we had to watch this whole boring video, hours of these videos. Guys that had nothing to do with us, but at one point in time crossed our path, so they're wearing their body cams. So this gentleman was out front of the Capitol on the opposite side that we were on, and I guess he got called in to come in. When he did, he was carrying, I want to say, I could be wrong. I'm not positive, but I think it was an M4 gun that he had. He put his gun in his vehicle, stowed it, and then went to the Capitol. why, if it was so deadly and if it was so violent, did he put his weapon in the back of the vehicle and go inside? And was also asked, by the way, by our attorneys, because there's protests in DC weekly. I mean, this is a common thing constantly. Maybe not as big as there were not as many people as what JAN6 was, but it is common that they have protests up there all the time and just all that.
That
So
makes
he was
sense.
asked, so he was asked, would you consider that January 6th to be of the violent side, the more? And he said, actually, no, it would be considered more on the mild side. So, I mean, that's their other second witness. There's two of their witnesses telling you from the stand about JAN6, but you don't see that in the news media. All
And
you see
this
in the news.
and this included all the video footage of you guys walking around doing your thing, and they still came up with some sort of a sentence.
They did, but that was much later. The judge gives the sentence. At first, it's just the jury that decides. The judge presides over the case, and So anyway, we go through all the stuff. We're asked all the questions I won't bore everybody with the boring details, but we had to sit there and listen for 3 days before we got up of all these things that we did. I mean, even the arresting officer that arrested me from in Florida, that was actually the guy that arrested me, came to DC to say, and he sits on the stand when one was asked, what do you know? And they start like they had a 45-page PowerPoint. This is what the American tax-paying dollar. On those PowerPoint slides were what the wind was 2 miles per hour that day. It was 78 degrees. It was all this, wasted time by the police and by the federal government. Follow me around. Hey, you could be, I don't know if you want to take it as a badge of honor or what, but what your podcast that I did with you was mentioned in the sentencing paperwork of I've gone on many comp podcasts and made outlandish statements about JAN6, even though the judge responded with, well, what was ever said? And they couldn't say anything. They didn't like it that I had my dad on my podcast for Father's Day. I didn't have him on for Father's Day for JAN6 purpose. I just had him on for Father's Day because he called me that morning and he usually has something on his heart and he starts sharing. I said, well, Dad, why don't you come on my podcast? We did mention a couple of things about JAN6, but they didn't like it because my dad said on my podcast that it was more like a family picnic. So anyhow, long story short, we have to go through all the.
They're trying to position it and make it look as negative as possible. And it doesn't sound like these people that are preparing this prosecution case, like they really even prefer freedom or the Constitution or the American way, because man.
Well, you see what they're doing to all these, almost every JAN6er that gets in trouble or gets into more trouble after their trial before sentencing is based on social media posts. I mean, I can't tell you how many JAN6ers have gotten in trouble for social media posts. There's a gentleman that my attorney also represents. He didn't go inside. He was never inside. He only Facebook Live from outside. And he got the 1512 charge, which is impeding Congress, but he didn't even go inside. And he was found guilty because of it. And because it was another DC jury and, he's found guilty. So he's facing up to 20 years in jail. That's a 20-year felony charge.
You know what's really good about all this? We're getting a really clear illustration that what they're doing in Washington, D.C. is the opposite of justice. You're supposed to be found guilty or not guilty based on the evidence, and regardless of the evidence, they're still getting prosecuted. So it's great that they're showing their hand, like, yeah, this is how dirty we are. We're not even releasing all the tapes. So there.
Right. I know, and everybody's got hope that this new guy is going to release the tapes, but I hate to be negative, but I will believe those things when I see them these days. I encourage everybody, don't jump to conclusions. Don't get the hopium. It's like, I hate
hopium
it because they give it to people like every time something happens. When Kevin McCarthy became speaker at the beginning of the year, everybody's always going to release it. It was like, he's never going to. He was never going to. He's one of them. Most of them are. I really think unless we get a complete flush of all of these guys in Congress, it's just going to keep being the same thing because they all are bought and paid for in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's sad.
I think you're right, and I think most of them are, but I also think that a fair amount of them have enough of a conscience where they could be like teeter-tottered just past that fulcrum, and it takes a critical mass of people like those Matt Gaetz, Eli Crane guys to kind of shift, like, hey, you guys, we're doing this wrong, and then have them have like this moment where, oh yeah, we're really screwing over the American population.
Well, Matt Gaetz was subpoenaed by my attorney to come over for one of the cases, and he declined and sent a cheap attorney to come over. That's a government paid for attorney to decline for them to come and speak in these cases. None of them are doing it. Not Marjorie Taylor Greene, not him. All these guys that claim to be, pro JAN6, it's talk. It's so cheap. It's talk. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've reached out to some of these congressmen that I thought wouldn't be that way, and they are.
So have you considered that maybe they've already decided to go to 20 other jury cases rather than yours, and their workload is more than what they can show up in court for these hundreds or thousands of people?
No, I mean, I would consider that, but I don't believe that's true at all.
Right
no.
on. Okay.
No. And anyways, so whenever we went through trial, at the end the jury deliberated. My gosh, I don't even think they deliberated for a full hour before they came back with a verdict. And by the way, that was during lunch. So count in some of the lunchtime. And this is a common thread that we're seeing over and over again in JAN6 cases now, which is they already have their minds made up before they even go to deliberation. I mean, this is it. There hasn't been anybody that's been not guilty thus far. I think there was one guy that represented himself, and I mean, they've sealed the cases of anybody for 50 years or some ridiculous amount of time that was found not guilty for that. I mean, that makes you wonder in itself, why would they seal them? Why is it not for the American public?
So that means that we can't access that information.
That's right. Yeah.
Like the case details for those people that they found not guilty
for 50 years. I want to say it was.
That's super sketchy.
It is. It's kind of like what they did with the JFK files. They sealed them to where nobody can see it, and it keeps getting pushed back and keeps getting pushed back and keeps. I mean, what are they hiding?
Yeah.
At that point, you got to ask the question: what are they hiding?
Yeah.
So anyways,
were there moments along that time between getting arrested and then having to go to DC for the prosecution? There were things like, one point there was some January 6th footage released. Did that affect your case? And then we had Jacob Chansley was released early out of prison for, I think it was April of this year. Did that affect your case? Anything like that?
It didn't. And Jacob Chansley even said on many podcasts that video footage that Tucker showed had nothing to do with his release. He already had known he was going to be released early. Usually, if you have I want to say it's over a year in federal prison, you only serve 80% of your time if you're on good behavior. And he was. So he already said that Tucker episode, although it seemed like that was why he got let out, he already had his release date before that even aired. So that really had nothing to do with it.
That's frustrating from my end because I see that and I'm like, oh yeah, cause and effect. That's great. This is how it's supposed to work. But that's not even true.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Dang.
The media is good, man. They're good at that stuff. They know what they're doing. This is their job. These are CIA operatives, a lot of these people. So
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so it was tough. It's been tough all that time. It's a long time in between and just waiting. And, so after sentencing was, we were found guilty on all the charges. Sentencing date, the trial was over. Sentencing date was set for October 12th. So you got 3 months in between. Of course, we came back home. And, it's been hard on my oldest daughter. I know I mentioned that before. I've talked about that on other podcasts. I mean, even when we were in DC for trial, she's worried the judge is going to put me in jail. She's worried. When we were at one night, we just went out to go be out and about because just to get our minds off things. And we went out to the Lincoln Memorial one night. We were watching the planes. My son was watching the planes come in. He really loved it. And you could see down through, where the reflection pond is to the Washington Monument, all the way down to the Capitol. And they said, honey, there's the Capitol down there. My daughter's 6 years old, and she goes, wow. And I said, you want to go down? We can go down there closer so you can see it. And she goes, no. I mean, dead serious, no. And I said, why? I mean, I laughed a little bit. I was like, why? And she said, I don't want to get arrested too, Dad. And I'm like, gee, my nitty. So anyway, wow. I've had to deal with that. And she did ask me after when we were going to go to sentencing as well, while we were packing our stuff the night before we were leaving, she goes, Dad, are you nervous? And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, are you nervous the judge is going to put you in jail? And I'm like, trying to hold back tears. And I'm like, I am, honey. I am a little nervous. And I said, are you? And she goes, yeah, I am too. So it's just she understands all this. I mean, sometimes they come over, like pretrial services comes over, and they do what's called an in-home visit, where they walk around your house, they walk in your closet, they walk in your bathroom. They have to look at all your floor plan. I don't know why they need to do it 2 or 3 times a year, but they do. And I have to tell my daughter if she's going to be here. Well, I have 2 daughters, but the oldest one is the one that really I know it affects. I have no idea the other time. I mean, my other daughter was 1 when they first came in 2021. So, I mean, I'm sure in some way it affects her as well. I don't even know what kind of effect it would have on them until maybe they get older. I don't even know. And so I told her they were coming. It's going to be fine. They're going to be here in and out. It'll be quick. You sure, Dad? They're not going to lock your hands? And I said, no, they're not going to do that again. And she goes, the first time that happened, she knew right off the bat that she was watching some video and it was some people making smoothies or something. She told me. And I was like, wow. I looked at my wife and I'm like, that shows that was traumatic because, everybody remembers, like, if 9/11, where were you on 9/11? Everybody knows. Where were you 3 days ago? What'd you do for lunch? I mean, you got to think about it, but it's because it was a traumatic moment in life. And so that was a traumatic moment for her. And, I've had many discussions about all police. She believes all the police are bad at this point. And I'm like, well, I have my days where I wonder the same thing.
Well, you think that, and then you think about all of the police officers that know what they're doing in that moment, such as raiding the house of an innocent man. Either the information's compartmentalized or they know it, yet they still go through with it because they need a job, because they need to feed their kids. Now, isn't justice and freedom worth losing your job over?
To me, yes.
I believe it is. When the vaccine stuff came around, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to find a different job soon. That sucks.
Right.
But turns out I didn't end up having to. But having that stage set and that perception kind of forced upon your kids of like, oh, this is how the police are and this is how the government is. And, this is supposed to represent the complete opposite of that. They're holding your future in their hands, in the hands of other people who are clearly, obviously biased and who haven't walked a day in your shoes, don't even know you, but they're willing to set you on a path of like, this guy is like, what did they ever use the word terrorist?
For whatever reason, man, I don't believe that I was ever on the terrorist list. I don't know why. I mean, I thank God, but I don't know if I was or wasn't. I have looked, but I never seen that I was. And they didn't use that. They didn't use that word, but
that's great. They use insurrectionist.
Yeah, they use insurrection. They use part of a mob. That I'm a rioter.
So by acting within the Constitution and within the American spirit, you go and do this thing, and they slap it down, say no, complete opposite.
That's right.
And then they hold your future in their hands.
Exactly. And the thing is, they know, they mentioned, and the judge even said at the end of the trial, after the jury had deliberated, after the verdict was read, he recognized that, we didn't do the things that we were accused of, in many ways, but they use this term, they have this, I don't want to say it's a precedent, but it's just something that a lot of the judges are using now. Some judge made this quote of, even though we weren't a part of the flood, we were a drip in the flood. And by us being there, we contributed to what happened that day. So, I mean, that's a dangerous thing, in my opinion, though, because it's like anywhere you go, if you're at a concert, if you're at a sporting event, or if you're just at a place where there's a crowd of people and someone commits a crime, is everybody at that point guilty because they were there?
No. And by recognizing that you're only a drop in that gigantic thing, they're saying, yeah, this is really insignificant, but you were still there, so screw you.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. So from that time, we went back and things happen and blah blah blah. Then they come out with the government asks this obscene amount. They wanted 9 months time, and normally the government never gets.
They wanted to put you in jail for 9 months.
For 9 months, prison. Yep. And normally they don't. They always take the high side of the, whatever it may be, and then of course the other attorney, the defense attorney, which would have been my attorney, would argue No, not that much. And then there's a probation officer. So there's basically the government recommends a particular sentence. They call you, they ask you, have you paid your taxes for the last 5 years? How much money's in your bank account? How much this and this, all this stuff to see how much you're able to pay as far as a fine, as far as restitution, even though we never touched anything in the building. And so they ask you all these evasive questions. Then after that, there's also what's called a probation officer, and they look over the whole case, and then they decide, you know, how much time they think that you deserve or what they believe you should get. Well, the first, so the I guess it would be the government said it would be a 6 to 12 month for any jail time. Supervised release, I don't remember. I think they might have even said 0, but I can't remember that. But then they said maybe any probation would be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And then you have the uh, the other side, which would be the probation. Now they recommended no jail time at all, just probation, which was really big because normally the way it works out is a lot of times the judges will go along with probation. And so anyhow, then you have the government or the prosecution, which is the Department of Justice. They would recommend what they want, or they would fill out their form and say this is what they're asking right before sentencing. My attorney counters with whatever he believes that he would like to give us, which obviously was no jail time. Because I have a family, my dad's 74 years old. He's never committed a crime in his life. The other guy we were with is 72 years old. Same thing. And so it's like, and we didn't do anything. We didn't touch anything. We didn't violently enter. We didn't break anything. We weren't pushing and shoving with police. We weren't interested in any of those things. So anyways, so when the judge, spoke, he said straight up right off the bat, we didn't deserve months, much less weeks. And so I was like, wow, I was surprised. Even though I know I was trusting the Lord and all that, but it's like, you just see person after person. There's people that pled guilty from 4 charges down to 1 that received still 60 days, 90 days, jail time, or 30 days home confinement. My attorney really did a good job, and in my opinion, because we only got 10 days, which it's still time, but 10 days compared to some of these other people. We actually took it to trial. And I just want to encourage a lot of other people. Like, people aren't taking these things to trial because they're afraid and they know that it's going to ruin their life. This is the part that people don't see, is the part that what it does to you financially, what it does to you, with personally. The local news hit pieces that they put out on all the JAN6ers are the worst, because that's what, like that guy I was talking about that was charged with the 20-year felony for filming, Facebook living outside the Capitol. He literally got home to a no job, and he can't get another job because nobody wants to hire JAN6ers. And it's a fact. It's just the way it is.
Wow.
There is nobody wants to touch JAN6ers. It is the way that it is. They're afraid. It's that simple, whether it be because they don't agree with what happened, or because they're genuinely afraid because they don't want to be judged based on, they disagree maybe, or they don't want to be, it's public opinion. It just is what it is. But, we believe I didn't understand it would be as harsh as it's been, but I did understand that I can't plead guilty for something that I didn't do.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
That's got to be really tough for all those people and their families. And there's got to be so much fear in that, losing your livelihood, being publicly ridiculed. That's so, so scary.
I know another lady, same 4 charges. She received 4 months in jail. Her husband is going through cancer treatment. Literally, I don't think it's stage 4, but they might be stage 3. I can't remember. He got 45 days. So it's like, there's no rhyme, no reason. His wife is his caregiver. He's going through cancer. What good does it do for the government to put these people in jail? I don't understand it.
Yeah. And maybe if it was murder or something, I'd understand that situation. But this is not any kind of a crime that I recognize as an American. And that's really abusive of those people in power, in that position, to put them into that situation. That sucks. So given the fact that this has showed the hand of kind of the inner workings of DC and their judicial system in a lot of different iterations by all the individuals that were involved, given the fact that it's shown that hand, and that this had to happen in order for us to be able to see that level of corruption. Would you do it again, knowing that this was the result?
Maybe after I see the outcome of what comes of all this, but if
Yeah.
nothing comes of all of it and it just stays status quo and nothing changes, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's tough. That's a tough one because I said before the judge, I'm not sorry for going to DC. I mean, I went to go to that
Yeah.
rally.
Yeah.
I wish now I wouldn't have gone down to the Capitol. Hindsight,
Yeah.
but again, I had no idea. I had no intention of doing anything wrong.
Nor did
Much
you.
less, yeah, but not much less. Like, I wouldn't have if we would have seen the violence, if we would have seen the police throwing flashbangs. I mean, a lot of the stuff that
Right.
happened was actually police initiated. I
Well,
hate
that's
to
a whole
say
different scenario.
it is. And actually, there's a great documentary coming out. I think it's called A Thousand Days of Darkness, coming out this October. It's supposed to be already out. I'm sure they're still working on it, but stay tuned for that because it's got a really awesome timeline of the actual events that took place that day.
Right
And
on.
also Dinesh D'Souza's new movie that just came out called Police State. I haven't seen it yet, but my attorney has. I know some other people that have, and they say it's powerful. I mean, it'll
Right on.
really choke you up because they're police. I mean, it's like people that go to school board meetings. They're arresting them. I mean, this is insane. The stuff that's
Yeah.
going on. I mean, this is straight up
Yeah.
communist tactics.
Yeah. That's an oppressive government.
I wouldn't
And
be for that for the other side. I believe everybody has a choice to protest, but and not to mention we just watched what 2 weeks ago where these pro Hamas protesters
mhm.
barged into the Capitol. They were in the middle of voting for Speaker of the House. They had to stop everything while they sat in there and they chanted and they cheered. Do you think they're going to be punished, or are they going to be followed for 6 months? Are they going to have their, houses raided by 7 to 8 cops
do
with
you think that
AR-15s drawn,
that was orchestrated?
orchestrated by who?
I
I
would
mean, it was
say,
orchestrated by Rashida Tlaib. She was a part of it.
okay, so yeah, people in the government that orchestrate these things and then tell the media, hey, be here at this time, and the media
Hey, man, they
machine
love
just
to
kind of does the
gaslight us.
rest.
It's just like
Yeah.
the gentleman. I think his name's Jamal Bowman, the congressman that pulled the fire alarm that was charged with a misdemeanor, and yesterday, and then today it comes out that, the video shows he said I didn't know when I was pulling the fire alarm that it was the fire alarm. Well, now the video comes out today. He goes over and takes the warning signs off of the door that said the fire alarm will go off if he pulls the signs down, throws them in the floor, pulls the fire alarm, and walks away.
Wow. Talk about
You can't
intent.
you can't even make this up. And you know what he said today when asked what's
What?
going to happen to him? He says, "I know I'm going to have to pay my fine, but within 3 months it'll be expunged, and I'll be able to go back to working for my district in New York."
Whoa.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
And it's just like with all the
That
stuff
sucks.
all the stuff with JAN6. Let the punishment fit the crime.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not fitting the
Well,
crime. I mean, the guys
and
that are the Proud Boys leader got 22 years. He wasn't even there.
what?
He was arrested on January 5th and held already. He wasn't even there. Enrique Terrario, I think that's how you say his last name.
Oh
22
man,
years he got.
this just gets better. That's horrible.
Yeah. He wasn't even at
That,
JAN6. And I
so
think there were 13 Proud Boys there that day, 9 of which, by the way, ended up being feds. And they were the ones that came up with this paper that they've used, as far as I know, against all these guys. And then the 5 that were there that had no idea, they weren't intending any of that either. They used the papers that these undercover agents gave them. I
hmm,
mean, it's pretty bad, man, what they're doing. And
yeah.
there's a lot of innocent people. There's an 80-year-old grandma that served time in jail for being at JAN6. I mean, what is going on with this
Yeah.
country?
Well, they're trying to make an example out of people because they want to maintain control and they don't want you
That's it.
to push back against it at all. That's why I asked that question, because like you had to put, like, by going to a peaceful protest outside the building that holds all the people that regulate our lives and our societal function, by going to that protest, that's like a pushback. They're like, it's like a, hey, no, stop it. Because, they are beholden to us, the people, or they're supposed to be. They've obviously twisted that a great deal, but it's the people pushing back and saying, hey, no, we're going to fly across the country because first of all, we want to support this and say no to that. That's what that act is. But then they want zero pushback. So they'll ruin your lives. They'll make you jump through hoops and all this stuff until they just have more, like a tighter grip of control and fear over the people.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just like I told you, that they tried to use, and they do it to a lot of people, what you said on your podcast about January 6th, or about we're not allowed to talk about what's happened to us. We're not allowed to say that our
What
lives have
was
been upside down. Not to mention, there was somebody that started a Give Send Go originally for us, which helped us pay our attorney fees, by the way,
oh
and
wow, that's beautiful.
survive in between the time. But you know what's crazy about it is the government, based on those Give Send Goes, they turn around, and that's why we have to pay a $3,000 fine each, because we raised money, and it's offensive to the court. It's offensive, as we were told,
Offensive,
to
as if
to raise money.
like I call you a bad name, it offends you, that type of offensive.
Yes, it's offensive that we
Whoa,
used our charges to raise money, and it wasn't even us.
I didn't
I
know
mean, look,
feelings were
I have a family, that I have to feed, and that's the thing that people don't understand. It's not like when they strip you of everything, and then you try to go out, or if people want to donate to you, and then they shut down your PayPal. That's happened to a lot of JAN6ers. Now they're shutting down JAN6ers cash apps because they were
well,
going through Cash App for a
PayPal
while.
during COVID, PayPal volunteered to shut people down or to fine them $2,500, their own users, if they did something in association with the vaccine or lending money to the truckers or whatever it was.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, one of the charges I believe that President Trump has out of Atlanta is like unauthorized speech. Is anyone waking up to this? I mean, like
Yeah.
unauthorized speech. What happened to the
Yeah.
First Amendment?
Oh, it's still there. It's still there. It's still here too.
Right.
So what was the context in which they mentioned the podcast? Like, what was the issue they were trying to raise to strengthen your
Just
sentencing?
because I went on podcast. Yeah. Yes. Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they just were trying to pile on in every way they could, even though there was no legal thing they held against you for that.
But that's what they're doing to a lot of JAN6ers. It's their and I have social media. I mean, I have Twitter mostly. I was deplatformed immediately. I put that out there. A lot of people, even friends that I had, thought that I got off social media because I was embarrassed or ashamed or something. It wasn't that. I was deplatformed out of nowhere. I had no idea. About a week or two later, after it happened, I got a text message from a buddy of mine saying, "Did you get off social media?" And I said, "No." And
Hmm.
he said, "Well, you don't have your accounts up." I mean, my Facebook was gone. I had my Facebook account for 10 plus years before that, and Instagram. And so now I do have an Instagram back now, but I don't have it under my name. It's under my podcast. I don't know that it would matter at this point. Maybe they dropped whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never given a strike. I was never told why that happened. I was never warned for saying anything. They just
Mm-hmm.
took me down and said my account was permanently disabled.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. Not only do they arrest you and humiliate you, then they take away your voice second.
Yeah.
So you can't speak out about it.
Did they go through a list of all the different places you had spoken? Like all the whatever
The,
podcasts and all that?
no,
They just picked one.
your podcast, the All Cast podcast was part of it. There was another podcast I went on with another gentleman, and I want to say the other one was Mel K's show or something like that I went on.
They don't
And
like the First Amendment.
they didn't use mine. That's what's funny. And I've had Jesse on quite often, and we've talked about a
Interesting.
lot of things. I know.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, they
but
don't like the First Amendment. That's twisted. But hey, now we see it. So what is your final sentencing?
the sentencing was I was sentenced for 10 days, jail time, uh, 2 years supervised release, as well as 2 years probation, which will run concurrently, which means they just run at the same time. So it's 2 years period, and $3,000 fine and a $500 restitution payment
Hmm.
to the Capitol. That was the sentence. Actually, I have
Wow.
to do. I think it's like 50 hours of community service. I want to say as well.
Mhm. That's that is gentler than I expected. When I thought about it, I anticipated something much harsher. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm sure you
Me
are
too.
too. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said the judge, he was very kind, and he said that he took into account that I have a family, and he didn't, feel that anything I did justified being taken away from them for a long period of time. And so I'm grateful for that. I mean, honestly, I am.
That's good. That's good. Back to the part where you said that you were given gifts of money to pay for your attorney fees, and that the court was offended by that.
Mhm.
That's what they said. The court is offended.
Yeah, he said
I
that's offensive, as he said that was offensive.
To the court, right? That's the
Mhm.
phrase, offensive to the court.
Right.
That's insane. Courts don't have feelings. Courts can't take offense. Courts aren't entities.
Right.
So I don't know how they factor that one in on their end.
I don't know, man. I mean, a lot of the things they say and do are just would blow people away. I really wish my attorney says it all the time. These courtrooms sit empty as JAN6ers go through trials. There's probably 5, 6 benches on either side. I mean, it could probably seat 100 people in some of these courtrooms. As a matter of fact, one of the courtrooms that's there is it's not the same one I was in, but it's just down the couple flights of stairs where President Trump was arraigned as well. So he's right there too. And, you know, people should go sit in on these JAN6 cases. And I mean, you're allowed to as a public, I mean, it's a public thing. And as a citizen of the US, you're allowed to go in there and see it for yourself and see what people are going through. And you watch the offenses. I mean, and just over and again, stuff people did, or, there was people that did much. I at first said, I don't believe anybody did anything, but I've seen some things that people did, and I didn't do that, and I wouldn't have considered doing some of this stuff or combating a police officer, yelling at the cop, cussing
Yeah.
him. I mean, I'm not what that's not their. They aren't the problem. I mean, in some ways, but we weren't there for that.
Right.
That's not what the whole thing was. That's what
Right.
Antifa did. But now we know there was Antifa members within the crowd. There was Black Lives Matter. I mean, JAN6 was in the crowd, and when he videoed it, he was standing in the same room and there was Ashley Babbitt when she was shot. I mean,
Oh,
what's going
wow.
on here? As well as the FBI admitting on the stand, they don't even know how many agents that were there that day, undercover agents. There was so many. Capitol police officers dressed in Trump clothes. Why? What were the reason for this? Metropolitan police officers dressed in Trump gear, as well
Yeah.
as what they call government contracted people that aren't really, of the FBI or CIA, but they're contracted by the government.
Do you happen to know what oversight committee would be the ones to look into all this?
Well, it would have been the one Jim Jordan was a part of, the House Oversight Committee, but they just never did anything. It's a shame. That's what I'm telling you. People don't realize, like, these people had an opportunity. We were told there was going to be we were going to have the opposite of the JAN6 unselect committee, as President Trump calls them, that we were going to investigate their trash. But what they do? They burned up all the paperwork. They threw them away. They got rid of all their stuff from their. Why? Why did they do that? Why are they allowed to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not held to the same standard as these people.
Yeah. Yeah. And
they never investigated them. There was never an investigation into them.
So those guys, like on the House Oversight Committee, is the Speaker of the House able to just kind of like mute them and say, "Hey, no, I'm overruling what you guys want to do"?
I know the Speaker of the House has the power to release the videotapes, and he didn't.
But that Oversight Committee does not have that power.
Only the Speaker has the power to get those tapes out.
Huh. I wonder why and how that gets categorized into that.
They say it's a national security threat if they let them out. I mean, what's the national security threat? I mean, I think I know what it is. I think I know what the national security threat is. When people see the truth, they're really going to be peed off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole different.
I mean, they have people in prison for this that are sitting in jail right now. It's sad.
It is. So when do you go to serve that 10 days of your sentence?
So as of right now, we don't know. It's going to be some time here. It's usually a couple months. I don't know the exact timing. Honestly, people ask me where, when. It's not going to be in DC. It is going to be locally. So it would be somewhere close to where I live. but at the same time, we don't know how much longer. We don't know how long, and so we sit and we wait
So you
and
get visitors.
trust the Lord. I can't answer that question either because I really just don't know.
Okay. If you do get visitors, would you want to have your children come to visit you in that setting? Or would you rather just say, Dad's going to be gone for a couple weeks?
I know it's 10 days, man. I've thought about that. Me and my wife were discussing that same thing. We haven't really fully discussed that out yet, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I would want them to come and see that. That'd be
Yeah.
tough. That'd be tough. I mean, even though it's only 10 days, once you just seen your kid on the other side, I don't know. It'd be tough.
Right. Yeah. And then them seeing you in that condition, especially with what happened with her response to the Capitol building and the police.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, is there anything else we missed about the JAN6 stuff? I mean, it seems kind of cut and
Probably, but
dry.
I can't think of anything else. I
Well,
mean, it's
if
just,
you can't think of anything, then it's probably not super juicy, exciting stuff. So we
there
got
you
to
go.
the main points, and I bet you're super relieved to have this kind of over with. And
A lot of people keep saying that. I am relieved for the sentencing to be over because now I know it's not like, am I going to get 6 months? Am I going to get a year or what? But I still have the 2 years probation, the 2 years supervised release. This is still like they don't give you any time served. There was a lady by the name of Rachel Powell who was literally on home or house arrest for like 2 years plus since Jan 6. She just was sentenced like a week or two ago to 57 months in jail. 57 months, that's almost 5 years. None of the time that she had served as at house arrest was used for any of that. She has 8 children. I'll just leave it at that. And grandchildren. I mean, it's really sad.
man,
So I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you're seeing, happen again and again. And so
yeah,
I thank the Lord that I I mean, I I somewhat feel bad because it's like some of these people are getting harsh sentences, and I mean,
yeah.
what am I going to say?
I'm sitting here trying to think of ways that people can help. Like, how do you help raise this issue if those types of injustices are occurring and those people are sitting alone in the courtroom receiving a sentence that shouldn't exist? How do we help that?
I just believe talking about it, man. At least, I mean, there's a lot of these people that need donations. They have
Attorney
whether
fees?
whether not just attorney fees. I mean, they have like think about it. You're taking away from your life for that would be for her if she
Yeah.
ends up serving out that time. That's 7 years. I mean, you have children. If it's not for donations, she doesn't have money set away like that. That's just one instance. But yeah, attorney fees. I mean, most of them have gives and goes. I mean, but I really think that word of mouth, and because I'm surprised at how many people literally are just completely unaware of some of these things that have been going on. They're just really
Yeah.
unaware of the harsh sentences, what the judges are saying to them, how these jury selections go. I mean, the average person is just completely unaware. I mean, we're supposed to be able to sit before a
Well,
jury of our peers. This is not a jury of my peers.
and you've lived this, but people that have
Exactly.
no association with anybody who's lived this or haven't gone through it themselves, those people don't feel the reality of the situation, as in this is actually happening because it hasn't happened to them. So they're so far removed from these things that it's people just don't know, or they'll see the
No, they don't.
information and they won't feel into it and think, oh wow, that's really happening.
Well, that doesn't include also the several postcards that my dad received and I received after it happened, from handwritten, by the way, from operatives, I believe, because I don't think that there's a human being out there that's going to sit down and handwrite some nasty card to you saying what a loser you are. You deserve to rot in jail. Horrible things. I get them on Twitter. I've had personal messages sent to me by accounts that have no followers. Makes you wonder who's behind them because they know things about the court case that the average person would never know. I get them on the Give Send Go. I've gotten messages from the same person again and again and again, and it would be in stuff about like personal things that happened in the courtroom. There was nobody in that courtroom. I mean, unless you want to pay the $3,000 for the transcripts, by the way, which is outrageous, then you wouldn't even know what happened. So where are they getting the information? Who are the harassers?
Wow. I mean, if it is one of the three-letter agencies or something in that capacity, it sounds like they're psychologically trying to oppress you by make you
Exactly.
feel like you're this certain thing. And
Oh,
people,
they bring up podcasts that I do by myself.
wow,
Because
they have a
I think
lot.
I said sometime about, there was people that didn't want anything to do with me because of that. And it's just the truth. I'm not trying to get anybody to feel sorry for me or nothing like that, but it's just a
Yeah.
fact. And they'll quote, of course, nobody wanted anything to do with you. You're an insurrectionist and you're a MAGA maggot, stuff like that. It
Yeah.
is, and I can
People
laugh
are,
at some of it, but it is just like,
eh,
who does this?
yeah,
And if this is the
it's
government, or if this
ridiculous.
isn't some agent out there or operative, like, get a life, man.
That's what I was thinking. You got so much other stuff you could be focusing on that's going to help people so much. But
Isn't it
no,
funny how they call the left calls the right hateful, bigots, all warmongers, all these things. Trump was going to get us in World War III. Look what we're dealing with right now.
yeah.
Trump's going to arrest all his opponents. I mean, then we literally everything they accused him. It's projection. It's projection. It's the way the left works.
Hmm. Well, I think that should be probably everything for January 6th stuff that I can think of. And
Okay,
if you're up for moving into the eschatology and the
sure.
current events kind of stuff, do you have any thoughts about that right off the bat?
In regards to what, the Israel Hamas war,
I guess whether or not the
or just
is
where we are, where I believe that we are biblically speaking, are we in the
yeah,
book of Revelation?
right.
Right.
If you have that
Okay.
timeline, where are we in association to these prophecies that have already happened?
So my personal opinion based on that, and like I say, it is my opinion based on scripture, because I don't like these people that come out and they start giving us facts that they factually, oh, this is what scripture, da, 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 da. So we're in the tribulation. We're not in the tribulation. And my personal opinion, why? You're going to know when we're in the tribulation. It isn't going to be where you can just go about your everyday life. I mean, that's just obvious. It's not what about it is tribulating. Are we going through tough times? Yes. In Matthew 24, Jesus said there's going to be wars, there's going to be rumors of wars. He mentioned several things there, and he said, but this is just the beginning. This is the beginning. I believe that's where we are. We're in the beginning. I mean, everybody says we're in the last days. Look, we've been in the last days according to scripture since Acts 2, when, the Bible talks about, that they begin to speak with different languages. I mean, and that he quoted what the prophet Joel said.
Hmm.
We've been in the last days for 2,000 years. Yes. But are we at the end of the end of the end of the end? No. And I believe a lot of this is, I mean, this is my personal belief based on any research that I've done, biblical and otherwise. I believe a lot of this stuff is fabricated by what, whether you want to call it the occult or Satan or the elites, whatever it is, that they want this time to come. They're desperate for their time to come. They're desperate to bring on the Antichrist, because this is what they want. And I just believe that's going to happen. And it is going to happen. We know those things are going to happen because it's scriptural, but it's going to happen on God's timing. It's not going to happen when they want it. I mean, we've seen in these magazines that they've had a pale green horse. They have all the different horses, the colors. This is not. I mean, this is what they want. And that there is some truth to this whole what we believe and what we think. I mean, it's just a. It's. I mean, some people think it's new age, but it's really not, because I mean, it's. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And also, you can go through, you know, the law of attraction is a real law, and this is what they want everybody to be promoting these. It's almost doom and gloom, and it's just I don't like any of that. I can't stand it,
Yeah.
actually. And it's like,
Yeah. I
this is not the way that this is supposed to be. I mean, that's the devil's job for the doom and gloom. That's not us.
yeah.
And another thing is too, Andy, I want to just say this in regards to the beast system, and when that all is implicated, it is going to be deception. Would you be deceived right now into following any of these people? I mean, they're evil. It's easy to see that they're evil. I mean, I know there is a group of people, it's
Yeah.
smaller than they put out, that believe in World Economic Forum and want a one world. I don't
Yeah.
believe it's going to be like that, because if it was, it would be so easy not to be deceived. I mean, the Bible says that that it will be so deceptive that even if God didn't cut it short, even the elect would be deceived. So
Hmm.
that the elect, meaning us, we would be deceived, because it's going to be something so great and seemingly wonderful, So it doesn't make sense for it to be all these. We've seen thing after thing that they tell us they're going to knock on our doors, they're going to vaccinate, want to know why you're not getting vaccinated, or they're going to try to. I mean, we've heard them just this year saying by November we're going to all have masks again. I just saw yesterday where they voted that out, and Congress just did away with all that. Them applying mask mandates and all these things on on airplanes, buses.
Yeah.
So you just see it again. And they just want the fear. It's the way they thrive. It's fear, hate, and anger. All those things.
Yeah. One thing that I recognize that the end times does mention is that there will be like contractions,
Right.
almost
They're
like a
right.
birth pain and then a relaxation and then a birth pain
Right.
and relaxation. And I
That's right.
really think that that's kind of what we are in, is kind of the beginning of those contractions, because you feel it. Like COVID was a big contraction, and I don't have another example at the moment, but that's kind of, we're
Well, nine
feeling the
eleven
relief
was
from
another
that.
time. 9/11 was another time where it changed the reality of our lives. I mean, you could go to the airport and you could go all the way to the gate with your family member. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah,
but
I
you could
do.
go all the way in. I mean, there was no security. Like it was security, but it was nothing like it is right now. It changed everything. Life after COVID, it's never going to. I mean, so many people want to still keep saying they want to get back to normal. It's going to be. I believe it's going to be great. The things that are coming, but at the same time, it's never going to be the way that it was. It's just is never going to be back to that.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because we're so programmed to think this certain way, and we're so programmed to want certain things. And the reality is that it's just that we're never going back to those things. But it's going to be better. It's going
Hmm.
to be better. I mean, it's going to be better than it was. And so, I agree with you though, but it isn't, we're not in the book of Revelation, in my opinion, where the seal, you hear some of these people saying the seals have been popped. Listen, the seals being opened in the book of Revelation, the scrolls being read, that's Jesus reclaiming the land. I mean, it simply says it in scripture. And at this point, we're not in that stage at this point. There's people that get all into are we going to have a pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation,
Yeah.
post-tribulation? I think that's just irrelevant because it's not irrelevant, but I mean, it's just people's opinions, and I don't believe that anybody can prove it any more than the other, although they'll argue that they can. But I think in the big scheme of things, like it's not that's Christians arguing amongst Christians. It's not really like the world sees us as
Hmm.
crazies when we start this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
And,
And
and
I,
and we have all these quote unquote prophets that really they're the ones that really get me going because they say things in the name of God, and nothing that they've said, especially in regards to the election being changed, anything happening, nothing ever comes to fruition. And
yeah,
it's like you're leading people astray, and then you're using God's name to do so. And it's just like, did you hear any of them talking about what was going to happen on October 7th when Israel was going to be raided by Hamas? None
I
of them
did.
brought that up.
I did read something very briefly about that. Hmm.
Did you? Who was it from?
I don't even remember. It was probably some Instagram scrolling thing that I
Oh, I see.
swooped past, and it did say that date.
Yeah, Jesse and I did a podcast on the Israel and the Israeli war that's going on right now, and I recommend people to listen to that. But
Do you know the
I
episode
live.
number?
It would have been 23, but I just said it on there. It just says special episode.
Oh, right on.
So, anyways, I just want people to understand, though. I mean, I lived in Israel for 3 years, watching. Know I've met with intelligence agents at the highest level. I mean, we just had connections when we would go there. My dad's been taking groups for years. Um, we just did. I mean, and in Israel, it's not like it is here with politicians being untouchable and you can't talk to them. I mean, they're more like just regular people. It's not it's not like here. I mean, at the highest level, you're not going to get around Benjamin Netanyahu, but my dad has actually met him because he had some friends that knew him before he was prime minister. And same with Ariel Sharon. One of the times he met, because see, these guys were in the military. The way it always works, usually they're in the military first, and then they get all the way up. But watching those guys, I mean, and by the way, going into grocery stores, going to the mall, going to the movies, going anywhere you go out in any place, restaurants, you're wanded when you walk in, and everybody in there's carrying guns. I know I've seen Charlie Kirk had a video saying this. I mean, I said it from the beginning, but I am telling you, especially around Gaza, everything there is under surveillance. I find it so hard to believe that these guys parachuted in without any knowledge, by the way, of anybody in government or the military knowing about it. I just do. I mean, people say, and Charlie Kirk said, I wouldn't go as far as to say let it happen, but was anybody told to stand down? It lasted for 6 hours. I'm telling you, everybody and their brother carries weapons there. They went into cities. They were able to take over a city. It just, some of these things just don't make any sense at all.
So I saw something in the news recently that said that the Israeli government is now changing its gun control policy to give ARs to the people. Is that if everybody's always armed, why would they do that? Is it because they have handguns but not ARs, or
They do have handguns, and a lot of the, and remember, anybody 19 to 21, 19, 20, yeah, 19 to 21, 19 to 22, as a citizen of Israel, you're going to the military. Everybody goes to the military. You go to the military before you can go to college. Like, it's a requirement. There is ways that they have situations, obviously, if there's any handicaps, or a lot of the religious Jews do not go, like the black and whites. They mostly, for the most part, are able to opt out. But the average Israeli, they all are in the military. They all carry M16s around, all of them.
so
You
what's
see them walking every which way.
so do you know if their gun law is anything like ours is in free states like Arizona,
It's much
Alaska?
it's much looser than anything that we have here. Everybody can open. You can open carry there. I mean, it's
Huh.
not like, yeah, it's. I'm telling you. And so to see some of that, I mean, you see, it's funny. Everybody talks about this Yuval Noah Harari guy. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's this little pencil neck guy. He's an Israeli, and he's buddies with Klaus Schwab. Everybody and their brother shows him here in the U.S., and he's all for globalism and AI and on and on and on. I have friends that I had a fiance that I was engaged to when I lived in Israel. I mean, I was young and stupid at the time, and thank God it didn't work out. But nonetheless, I still have friends that I knew there. And long story short, they don't even never even heard of the guy when I ask them. So you see what we see here in the U.S. as far as the news that they want us to see. It's not always the same as it is there. I mean, Israel's a small country. I lived in Jerusalem, and it is like it used to be here. I would say, like, people would compare something to like the Andy Griffith Show or some of these old '60s shows where everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
and it's common there. I mean, everybody smokes cigarettes there. It is just a thing. Like my dad always says, it's like it was in the '60s there, and because that's how it used to be in the U.S. Everybody smoked. I mean, everybody just did.
Hmm.
And so it's like it is that way. And most people have this misconception as well that when you go to Israel, I did for the first time, that everybody there is religious. I mean, being a Jew and Judaism are two totally different things,
Yeah.
because you're Jew
And
based. You're
what's
a Jew
yeah, what
based. It's your Jew based on your blood. I mean, it's based on your blood. It's usually, and it's always considered from the mother. And so, if your mom is Jewish, you're considered Jewish. It's that simple. Judaism, you'd be stunned. Israelis are some of the most secular people that I've ever met.
okay.
Believe me. I mean, it's
So
just the way they are. Not all. I mean, some are. Some go to the synagogue on Friday nights before Shabbat. They do, and they. It's funny.
so
I'll explain it to you.
it's just like any other country where there's varying degrees of whatever that predominant belief is. Okay, so then when we
Yes, they
look
have
at it
what's
from
called
our
modern Jews. They have what's called religious Jews. They have what's called Hasidic Jews, which are like the black and white, the ultra Orthodox. Like, I mean, ultra Orthodox, some people don't know this either. I mean, they still have arranged marriages. There's many times you'll see a nice looking woman with this ugly looking dude, and you're like, what in the world? And they still have arranged marriages. It's a real thing. They literally don't, like, I don't know how else to say this, but to say it, because I just knew this from meeting. I was young, and I mean, I know I had friends there. Well, anyway, so they don't have sex for pleasure. They have sex because they want to have children, and they literally wear like a covering, to where the only
yeah.
thing that's not covered is, I mean, this goes on today. The women shave their heads and then put on a wig, and it's so that the men don't lust after them. I'm telling you, it blow your mind. They still
Wow.
to this day, Israeli women, not just not just Americans or anything like that. Israeli women that would go walk in one of these religious neighborhoods that don't have a skirt on that covers their, at least covers their kneecaps. They have thrown. I've seen kids throw stones at them. Israelis, other Israeli kids. They're religious, but the gist of it is they still, like, they're pretty hardcore, man.
Wow.
And just the same way as they hate the Arabs too. Now I understand why. Don't get me wrong, I do, because I mean they're terrorized all the time. It never stops. It's like down in Sderot, which is just outside of Gaza. They shoot missiles in there all the time. These kids are going to school. They have to go into these underground bunkers. I mean, most people would up and leave and say, I'm not living there. They're resilient. They don't want to. They believe this is their land. They want to live in that place. And but it goes both sides. I mean,
So who shoots missiles at who?
this would be Hamas shooting missiles out of Gaza
Just
into
regularly prior to this
into
attack?
yeah, oh, they do it all the time. It's been going on for years. This is nothing new. Normally, the Iron Dome shoots them down. That day, the Iron Dome wasn't, for whatever reason, malfunctioned. That's another mystery. I mean, it's just the craziest things that happened that day. And so, anyways, but this conflict goes on forever. I mean, even down in Gaza or anywhere that they call occupied land, which would be any Palestinian area, Ramallah, back when the Intifada was going on, they would have the suicide bombers come out of these areas. They'd go to the mosque on Friday and get all stirred up by one of their imams or whatever they call them. And they'd go out and that's when they'd usually have these terrorist attacks, these terrorist bombings. I mean, they would go get on a bus with a bomb strapped to them and blow themselves up on a bus in the name of Allah. And so I've seen math classes where these children are taught at 2 and 3, 4 years old, when they're first going to school learning math. You have 4 Jews, you kill 3 Jews. How many Jews do you have left? They have Mickey Mouse come in the room. Not Mickey Mouse like we know here in the US. That's the actual Mickey Mouse. It would be this ugly looking Mickey Mouse. But he would teach these children how evil Jews are, and they would sing these horrible songs about Jews and how this is what these kids are taught from the hate is in them. It's like, I don't know that you can get it out.
So what's the stance in the reverse of the Jews towards those Arabs or Muslims or
Oh,
whoever?
they can't stand them. Of course they can't stand them.
So do they retaliate when things happen like that?
I mean, militarily,
Regularly?
they're a lot more tolerant. I'll put it that way. I have seen with my own eyes, Israeli soldiers are usually in everywhere. And I mean, when you go to Hebron, what would be considered, an Arab surrounded by. There's a small Jewish community there, but this would be the area where Abraham was buried and Sarah, and I think Isaac might even be there too. I can't remember. But anyways, so when you go to this place where that's at, you see these presence of Israeli soldiers. I mean, they're in that area because it's also a tourist area where many tours come in there. I mean, this is how Israel makes a lot of their money, is from tourists, not just from the US, but all over the whole world. You'll see people there from China, from India, from Africa. I mean, all over the whole world, you see people come in. You see people on tours there. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that I've seen them send children, and I tell you, children like 6, 7-year-old children, to go pick up rocks, and there's rocks everywhere there. It's the way the terrain is. It's kind of like it is in Arizona. Go pick up a rock and throw it at an Israeli soldier and hit them with it. They've thrown them at buses. I mean, my dad's been on multiple buses that have had windows. Some of the buses ended up having to get to where they would have bulletproof glass, and some of them are like bomb proof as well. It's like a tank on wheels, literally, because they do, and they send the children down there to do it. So how do you respond to that situation? I feel like it's like the beginning of the movie American Sniper, whenever the woman sends her child. Remember that? And he's sitting there on the rooftop. He doesn't know what to do. Well, what do? Let him kill you, or do you? That's why I say war is terrible. It's like, this is why we shouldn't be, like, we don't want the war. But to be honest, the Israelis don't, for the most part. And as a matter of fact, I don't know that any of them that I know that are personally, that are the people, not government officials. Their government's as corrupt as it gets. I mean, I'll tell you right now, even their people will tell you that. The way their government, the way it's set up, you don't just vote in a prime minister. They vote for a prime minister, then they have to take people from each group, and they have a lot more parties than we do, and give them, okay, what do you want us to give you in order for you to form the government? So
this
I mean,
is
just breeds
the Israelis
government, Israeli government. This is how it is. And they have, by the way, Arabs that sit in their government. Could you imagine the US having, Chinese sitting in our government that are telling us what to do with our country?
I think we do,
Well,
don't we?
I know what you're saying, but I mean on the actual, like, factual people,
Right.
not undercover agents and things.
Yeah.
But the gist of what I'm saying is that most Israelis, they just want to go about their lives. They want to live their life. They don't want to deal with this conflict.
I imagine
They
most of
don't.
the Arabs on the other side also want the same thing. I'm sure many of them do. They're just regular people born into a situation. It's like, okay, you either adapt, or how do you get out of that?
It's just sad on the highest level that they're just so taught hate from such a young age. And it's like, I mean, that's where I feel bad for them, because it's just ingrained in them.
So
it's ingrained in them.
I know that that's not all of the Arab world. Do you know what parts of the Arab world that happens? Because I've been to some parts of the Arab world, and some parts are pretty laid back and peaceful, and
Right.
doesn't
Yeah,
seem like
I've been to Turkey, I've been to Egypt as well. I agree with you. It's not. And you know what? These same people that they're crying about that land have been rejected from all those places. The Egyptians, they don't want anything to do with them. Listen, I've been to some of their neighborhoods, even the Israeli Arabs. I've been through their neighborhoods. They all drive Mercedes, they all drive BMWs. They have mansions like that are floors, 6, 7 floors of it. Looks like a one big building. And did you realize it's a house? But you know what? The sidewalks are trash. There is trash everywhere. I mean, it's
yeah,
their culture. They're brought up like this. The women, by the way, this is what's so crazy. All these liberals that are pulling for, you know, Islam, those women have no rights. They have no rights. You'll see women, dude, as young as like 18, 19 with these 50-year-old men, and they've got 4 or 5 children. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's still arranged marriages. They have nothing. They're not allowed to say anything about that. I mean, you think that's the life they want?
right,
I mean, it's really crazy.
right.
So I'm just saying, so it's just within that culture, but not outside there. You're right. Not in
So
Saudi Arabia, not in these other
so
places.
that tension is really pretty concentrated to that area. But when people talk about it, they say all of Palestine, or all of the Muslims, or all the Jews, or all of these blanket terms that really don't apply to probably the
They don't.
majority. As far as the Jewish population, I don't know, but I know how spread out the Arab population is over that region. But is the Jewish population there pretty concentrated in
It's
Israel,
it.
or
That's
is it
it,
all
man.
over? They're not really
They
all
do.
over.
They did at one time because there is. That's the thing. It's kind of like it is here. You know, you have Jews that are from Iraq. They have Jews that are Sephardi Jews that are out of France. I think there's over 1 million of them there
Yeah, I have
now.
a couple friends
There's
who are from Russia,
yeah, Russian. I was going to say
Russians.
Russian Jews as well, and that's a whole other story and a whole other topic I could tell you about. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of Russian Jews there, and there's a lot of I mean, there's Turkish, there's Kurdi Jews. I mean, yeah, they came, but you know, it's biblical prophecy when God was going to bring them back and bring them back to the land. And you know, then you have all these people that argue that it's not the land, man. I think that there is so much disinformation out there these days. I just say it as like I'm not for war. I don't want to be in these wars. I don't want the. I mean, like the Speaker of the House, who everybody's excited about, goes out first day and he drops. You know, goes in to see Biden, and they agree on $100 million spending. You know, money to go to give to Ukraine and Israel, and now they're going to send troops to the Middle East.
what
This is what we don't want.
that
First
happened
day in,
today,
he's doing this. Yes, yes.
dude? That's disappointing.
And is that MAGA? Is this guy a MAGA guy? And he's
Well,
supposed
I
to be, but
in
that's what
these
I'm trying to say. He's
in
not.
this type of a situation, if you're trying to turn like a giant ship, it takes little amounts at a time. In this situation, so like what happened with removing the speaker, at least what it appears like is this is a big deal. This is really good for us, and they finally were able to put somebody in this case. So I'm not defending them at all. I'm trying to think like strategically, if you're going to change this government that's doing these things, then you need to do it with degrees of steps.
Well, see, that's the hopium that I was telling you about, that they want to give us this false sense of hope that we hope that it's going to be
Right.
changed. And we hope. And it's like Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown. How many times do we go try to kick that football before we realize, hey, I mean, look, politicians were never meant to be career politicians. The way the Constitution
Yeah.
had it set up, it was supposed to be the farmers. You go serve 1, 2 terms and you go back home. You know, anything. It was just supposed to be the average Joe goes in, serves, and leaves. Not
Yeah.
goes starts in Congress, state, then goes to the U.S. Congress, then becomes the senator, then a governor, then the president. Now you're 20 years politician. It was never meant to be this way, and then these people become millionaires because of the lobbyists. I mean, you could just see how the
Yeah.
corruption's just.
Totally.
It'd be tough, man. I mean, think about it.
Totally.
If you,
And
you have
and
no
I
money and you go
I
to DC,
I see all that, and I think of like what's it going to take to turn that, and that critical mass, that small group of people making those concentric expanding circles with each little step that they take, is like it gets bigger and bigger, and the actions they're taking become more and more effective with each one that happens. So I see all the stuff you're saying. I totally agree. I acknowledge that it's all there, but in trying to think of, well, what's the reverse of that? How do you make that go the other direction? And I can see it happening, assuming that's not all orchestrated as well for our own viewing pleasure.
Right. Well, think about it this way. Think about if they took the election away from us again, where would we be at, like this come this fall or next fall, as far as, you know, the 2024 election, if they cheated or if somehow they threw President Trump in jail, or, I mean, I don't see any other way that this country would go other than people would be ready for a civil war.
Yeah. Hope it doesn't go that route.
No, I don't. I hope it doesn't either. And don't get me wrong, I really still believe the best is yet to come for this country. I believe that, you know, good things are going to come, but I believe that it is
But not through that means of
no,
politicians. Yeah.
no. I don't know that it wouldn't be through politicians, because that's why I believe that that I said this last time I think I was on your show, that I believe that believers should be getting involved. People that are godly,
Yeah.
people that are God fearing, that believe in the Constitution. I mean, if we all stay out of it, then what do we expect?
Well, we're going to get whatever's given to us at that point.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's become a totalitarian regime. I mean, we see it every single day. And
yeah,
it's not just with JAN6. Like I told you, them look what they're spying on people that went to school board meetings.
that's
They're
crazy. I saw that.
taking businesses away from people that turn down, you know, that don't agree with, you know, gay rights and things like that. Like the guy that didn't want to do the cake, and then you could shut his business down. I mean, so
Mm.
is it freedom, or we only have freedoms according to their rules and regulations? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's that saying that all laws made um repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. Do you know that phrase?
Right. Mm-mm.
So they need to make that into like a clause, like a law or something, a clause of the
Right.
Constitution.
Right.
So
No doubt.
yeah. Well, what do you any other thoughts about that, the end time stuff and the current events and kind of how those overlay each other?
Man, I just believe though that, like I said, I really think that we're on the verge of what they want is, you know, that everybody thinks that the Antichrist is coming on the scene. I just believe that this is what the devil wants right now, but I believe it's going to happen in God's timing. As far as everything else, I like I told you, I believe that we're at the beginning stages of it. You know, there's a lot of biblical prophecy that's yet to be fulfilled,
Yeah.
and so I just that's the way I see it. I see that those things are still to come,
Right on.
and you know, it is what it is. I mean, we knew this was going to happen. We know this is all coming, and I still believe God will protect us. It doesn't mean that we're, you know, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be. I mean, what does the book of Esther say in Esther 4:14, that we were born for such a time as this? I mean, I really believe that it is that way.
I agree with that.
And so you know, we're very well equipped to handle these things and well prepared. And you know, God saw these things coming. God saw all this stuff coming. So he didn't fall off the throne on account of it. And I believe the best is yet to come, man.
Right on. Well, that's good. I hope you're right, and that's where I'm putting my energy as well. Well, thanks so much, Casey, for coming back on and doing this. And
Absolutely, brother.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right, awesome. Well, take care.
All right, man. God bless you.
You too.